Rabbi Zilgazin began the Farbrengen this afternoon that today was Shabbos Chazak. And as we all proclaimed when end of Kriyas HaTorah, Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazak. Triple expression. And this comes at a time when we finish the third of the Chumash Vayikra. And we are about to enter the month of Kislev, which is also the third of months count. I'm sorry, thank you. We're about to enter the month of Sivan, thank you, which is also the third of months, counting from Nisan. And as we find in Gemara, the Gemara puts a special emphasis on the fact that the Torah was given in the third month. And as the Gemara explains, it was given to a nation that consists of three categories: Kohanim, Levim, and Yisraelim. Torah is divided into Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. Torah was given through Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the third born in his family, first Miriam, then Aaron, then Moshe. So we see that the number of three is of a special significance. And if we look at it deeper, the inyan of three relates to Machshava, Dibur, Maaseh, which is also three: thought, speech, and action, deed, Maaseh. And the lesson which we derive from this, the lesson in Avodas Hashem, which we can take out of all this, by emphasizing the inyan of three, is the fact that Avodas Hashem primarily has to be stressed in Maaseh, in action and deed, which this is the third, coming from Machshava and Dibur. First comes Machshava. Machshava is usually which a person keeps to himself. Then comes Dibur. Dibur is when a person has a certain thought, he later develops it and discusses it with his friends, and they help him on this specific thought. And then it comes down into Maaseh, which that is the final thing which the person has to do. And the stress, the heroah, which we get from the Chazak of Pashas Vayikra, is the importance of three, the importance of the third. What is the inyan of three? That is the third inyan, that's the inyan HaMaaseh. HaMaaseh hu ha'ikar. That Maaseh is what counts most. And actually, this is what Yeridas HaNeshama Lamata was all about. When the Neshama wasn't the Lamayla, the Neshama was able to have Machshava, the Neshama was able to have Dibur. What was the Neshama missing when the Neshama was standing in its Ruchnistic format, Lamayla? There the Neshama was missing Maaseh. So when the Neshama comes down into this world, this is what the Neshama is coming for. And this is what the main inyan in Avodas Hashem is, stressing the inyan of Maaseh, HaMaaseh hu ha'ikar. And here the Rebbe continued. This we can understand. It's brought in Sifrei Diktuk that every word in Hebrew has a sheirish. There's a root to every word, and the root of the word consists of three letters. This is the opinion of most Sifrei Diktuk. However, Rashi, says the Rebbe, is under the opinion that a sheirish, a root for a word, could be a two-letter word as well. And the truth is, we find a one-letter word. Where do we find a one-letter word? We find it in Chumash. In Chumash, I think it's in Parshas Ha'azinu. Ha Lashem Tigmalu Zois. The Ha is a separate word from Lashem. So it's a word in itself, this Hey. So if it's a word in itself, the sheirish of the word is only a one letter. But being that we know that Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, everything, all opinions are all words of the Rebishter, so it can be explained that being that in mitzvahs, there are some mitzvahs which we fulfill them only through machshava, only through thought. There are other mitzvahs which we fulfill them through dibur. And most mitzvahs are fulfilled through maaseh. And this is reflected in the sharoshim. See, because everything in Torah, everything in Kedusha relates to Torah, has a source in Torah. Those sharoshim, where we find the sheirish of one word, this corresponds to the mitzvahs that can be fulfilled only through machshava. A sheirish of two words relates to mitzvahs which can be fulfilled through dibur. Dibur is the second. And according to most, Sifrei Diktuk. A root of a word has to have 3 letters because this corresponds to most mitzvahs, which most mitzvahs have to be fulfilled through Maisa. And Maisa, as we just discussed earlier, Maisa is the 3rd. And this is what the neshama gains when the neshama comes down into this world, primarily the inyan of Maisa. This is what Alter Rebbe says, quoted in Tanya, that a neshama, each and every Yid's neshama is a chelik alekami mal, and Alter Rebbe adds on the word mamish. What is the pshat mamish? Something which is tangible is mamish. In other words, in Gashmius, how it comes down into Maisa, here in this world, it has to be Gashmiistic. And Gashmius is bestly expressed through Maisa. So that's why most of the mitzvahs, we fulfill them taka through Maisa. However, there are also mitzvahs in Torah which can be fulfilled through Dibur, or such which can be fulfilled through Machshava only. And this inyan, which is discussed at the beginning of the Sedra, Chazak v'nis chazaik, which is a shayches to this week's Sedra, is also reflected in the Siyam in the end of the Sedra. The end of Pashas Bechukosai, it is brought out Ha'asiri Yiyah Kodesh. Where the Torah talks about Maisa Boka V'Tzayin, Kodesh Hayav Tachas HaShavet, Ha'asiri Yiyah Kodesh L'Shem. The 10th one will be holy. Number 10 is a certain shleimus, is a certain completeness. The completeness of numbers, the first cycle of numbers, it is completed by number 10. And 10 also relates to the inyan of Geula. Regarding Geula, we find many inyanim that have a shaykhas to 10. The paraduma, which will be brought when Mashiach will come, will be the 10th paraduma. The shir, there are 9 shirim in Torah, 9 songs. The 10th of them will be when Mashiach will come. So the inyan of 10 has a certain shleimus, brings out something of whole and complete. And this relates to the inyan of Shloisha, which we just discussed, which Shloisha is also an inyan of complete. It's the completeness of the machshava dibur ma'is of a person. So when the ma'is of the person is put into full practice, this leads to this inyan of Asiri Yiyah Kodesh, that Asiri Yiyah Kodesh will be revealed. In other words, we will get the inyan of Geula. And all of this comes through Behar-Bechukosai. What's the meaning of Behar-Bechukosai? So Bechukosai, we know Chassidus explains that Bechukosai, besides the simple meaning of Bechukosai, it means Chukah is Maloshin engraving. And as Chassidus elaborates at length, what is the difference between writing and engraving? That was something that is written, it can be erased. Why could it be erased? Because the ink and the paper are 2 separate objects, and they're just being combined. However, when something is engraved, it cannot be erased. The letter is there eternally. When we engrave something on anything that it is engraved, it remains there. It remains there forever. Memele, what we are saying is, now we are having a combination of Behar and Bechukosai, because the inyan of Sinai, Behar means Behar Sinai. Behar Sinai, we got the luchos, which the luchos were in a way of chakika. The luchos were engraved. And talking about this inyan, the Rebbe says the word chukas is also a 3-letter word. And this takes us back to the inyan which we discussed last week. Last week we spoke about Emor, the lesson which we derived from Pashas Emor, which, by the way, Emor is also a 3-letter word. Emor va'amarta, the importance of lahazir gdeila malaktan, and the responsibility and importance that the adults have, that they have to caution the youngsters as well. In other words, all of this is bringing out a total inyan of achdus. And when all of this is brought into reality, what does this lead? It leads to the revelation of all the inyanim of Asiri Yiyah Kodesh L'Hashem. It leads to the inyan of Giyul. The Rebbe continued with a question in Pashas Behar. In Pashas Behar, the beginning of Behar, the Torah tells us about the mitzvah of Shemitah, which means that on the 7th year, we're prohibited to do any type of field work in Eretz Yisrael. It's supposed to be a sabbatical year, a year of rest from field work. If we look into the Psukim, the Torah begins, Daberu b'nei Yisrael, v'amarta aleim and tell them, Ki saveyu al haaretz asher ani nosen lachem. When you will enter the land which I am giving you, what will be? V'shofsa haaretz Shabbos l'Hashem. the land shall have a sabbatical to Hashem. Then the pasuk continues. For 6 years you shall do your field work and take care of your vineyards. And then Uvashana Hashviyas, and the 7th year should be a year of Shabbos. So when do we have the Shabbos? The year of Shabbos we have after 6 years of field work. How does the Torah start? Before even the Torah talks about the 6 years of work, the Torah says right away, the first pasuk, V'shof Sahar Shabbos Hashem, upon entering Eretz Yisrael, you will have a sabbatical year to Hashem. This is not what happened. Furthermore, even the whole union of counting 6 years didn't begin immediately with the Yidden entered Eretz Yisrael. First, it was 7 years. It took him 7 years to conquer Eretz Yisrael. It took 7 years to divide Eretz Yisrael. Sheva shekifshu v'sheva shechilku, as the Gemara refers to it. First, after that, they began counting 6 years, and after the 6 years came the 7th year, which was a year of Shabbos. So, question arises: how does the pasuk start off right away? That Kisa it's upon entering Eretz Yisrael, V'shavsar Shabbos Lashem, the land will have its Shabbos. It's not so. The Shabbos first came after 6 years of work. So the Rebbe brings down that the Torah here is giving us a message. What has to be the ultimate goal of Yidden upon entering Eretz Yisrael? True that physically the mitzvah of Shemitah first came after 6 years of work. However, Yidden had to know right at their beginning, when they first point, when they're entering Eretz Yisrael, what is their ultimate goal in Eretz Yisrael? The ultimate goal in Eretz Yisrael is to reach to a point of Shabbos Lashem, to reach to a point of Kedusha. What does Shabbos stand for? Shabbos stands for a Yid is elevated on Shabbos. A Yid has a certain escalation on Shabbos, a certain heiligkeit on Shabbos. What are we told? That immediately upon entering Eretz Yisrael, we have to know what is the ultimate goal of coming into Eretz Yisrael. V'shof sa'ar Shabbos Lashem. Have this in mind during your 6 years of work. And when you have this in mind during the 6 years of work, it's different work years. Because you know you are heading to something. You are heading to a year of Shabbos Lashem. Says the Rebbe, the same is in the Avodah of each and every one of us in our daily lives. There's a famous expression from Tzemach Tzedek, Machdo Eretz Yisrael. Chassid once came to the Tzemach Tzedek and he told him he wants to move to Eretz Yisrael. Tzemach Tzedek told him, Machdo Eretz Yisrael, make Eretz Yisrael here. What does that mean? It means that the Kedusha that Eretz Yisrael has, what is Eretz Yisrael? It doesn't just mean not a geographic location. It means he was striving to the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. So the Tzemach Tzedek is telling him, Machda Eretz Yisrael, create that Kedusha over here. So this same message of the V'shof Sa'ar Shabbos Lashem, we have this every day in our Avodas Hashem. We begin our Avodas Hashem. First thing, we open our eyes. Is we think about the greatness of, we're supposed to think about the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how do we start our day? In the format of Machshava, Dibur, and Maaseh. Then comes, we recite Moedani. After Moedani, we pour the Negelwasser. So Moedani is the Dibur, the Negelwasser is the Maaseh. What does the Yid bring out in Moedani? What do we say? Moide Ani. Who is Ani? When a person says Ani, that means his etzem hanefesh, something which is above and beyond any type of name definition or any other type of title which he has. He's referring to his real etzem hanefesh, the essence of his neshama. And who is his neshama tying itself with? Lefanecha. Lefanecha touches the Rebbe means to the pnimiyus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The etzem of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being bound with the pnimiyus of Ayid. The etzem of Ayid, the ani of Ayid, is beginning every morning. How do we start our day? By tying our ani with the lefanecha, with the pnimiyus of the Rabbeinu Shalom. And this is supposed to be carried through our entire day. During the day, we're involved in all different types of things. However, this is like the message of V'shof Sa'ar at Shabbos Lashem, which the Torah tells us before the 6 years of work. The same idea. There is the Moida Ani, which comes before we begin our day. which tells us what our day is supposed to be like, which helps in the entire day, that the day should be such suitable for the farbund, for the tie of the ani and the lefanecha. And the same we even have as a child is being brought up. And the chinuch of a child begins at a very early stage, at such an early stage that as soon as an infant is born, we hang up the Shir HaMalos. What is all of this about? All this is about that we're permeating into the child this type of a chinuch so that he should be able to carry this message with him throughout his entire life. The Rebbe continued referring to the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, today's the fifth Perek, which, by the way, Pirkei Avos in itself only consists of 5 prokim. The 6th one is a Beraisa. Shanu Chachamim Bilshain HaMishnah. The Beraisa sounds similar, it's set up in the same way of Mishnah, but it's really not Mishnah. Why do we say the Shabbos before Shavuos? Because that really emphasizes the greatness of Torah. Or as it's called, the Beraisa, it's a Beraisa of Kinyan Torah. It tells us how we can acquire Torah. So the last of the 5 prakim is what we are saying today, the 5th Perek, which begins by Asara Ma'amaris Nivroim. The Rebbe created the world with Asara Ma'amaris. The Mishnah goes on right away. The Rebbe could have really created the world with 1 maimah. But why didn't he? So the Mishnah continues. Lehipara min harashayim. This makes it stronger to get even with the Rashayim that destroyed the world, because the world was created with 10 sayings, and also to give reward to the tzaddikim that upkeep the world. Says the Rebbe, if the world was able to be created with 1 maimah, and the Rebbe created it with 10, this is not a reason for him to take revenge of the Rishayim and reward the tzaddikim. Let's imagine a nigla in halach. Everything has a price. And a certain item, certain object, which is worth a certain price. Comes somebody and overpays for it. Pays much more than the item is worth. Later, when he wants to sell it, or he wants somebody else to take over this item, he will tell him, listen, I paid such a fortune for it, I want you to pay the same fortune. The man will tell him, no, I will pay what it is worth for. If the world is such, which could have been created by Maimar Echad, then that's it, and all it's worth is Maimar Echad. It's not worth Asara Ma'amoris. So we say, really, the world the Rebbe is a Kol Yachol, he could do everything, so therefore he could have created a world by Maimar Echad. Why did he create the world by Asara Ma'amoris? He created the world by Asara Ma'amoris so to get even with the Rashayim, to give reward to the tzaddikim. You cannot get even with the Rashayim because the Rebbe wanted to create the world by Asara Ma'amoris. Therefore, he will utilize this. Thank you. He will utilize this and let it out to the Rishayim that are destroying the world. The value of the world is only Maimar Echad. If Yochel Boris b'Maimar Echad, then that's what it's worth. It's not worth anymore. So we cannot say the Rebbe invested Asara Ma'amoris. He invested much more than it's really required, so that he made a major investment. So those Rishayim that are destroying the world deserve a major punishment, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a major investment. If the investment could have been, which means the value of this investment is only Maimar Echad. So the Rebbe made a Asara Ma'amoris. It's no reason for him to lipara min harashayim, because he invested Asara Ma'amoris into it. What the Rebbe brought out was, to answer this question, that the Rebbe is a Kol Yochel. And when we're talking about a Maimar Echad Yochel Hibaros, that is, in the world of Yecholos, in the world of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's power, he could have created a world with Maimar Echad. However, this world that he created, Taka required the Asara Ma'amoris. And being that it required Asara Ma'amoris, so that's the price and the value of the world. So therefore, להיפרע מן הרשעים שמעבדים לסוילם, ולהתנסח יותר לצדיקים שמקיימים לסוילם. There is a world, in world of worlds, which the Rebishter could have created, and the Rebishter could do anything. So he could have created a different world than Maimar Echad. This world that he created is like as such that required us. And talking about this inyan, says the Rebbe, everything is accurate. This inyan of creation of the world is discussed where in the 5th page. Because 2 times 5 corresponds to 10. There's also a Chazal, the Gemara tells us, Behei nivra olam hazeh, that the Rebishter created this world with letter Hey. With letter Yud, he created olam haba. With letter Hey, he created olam hazeh. So the Rebbe, a letter Hey has 3, there's the roof of the Hey and 2 lines. One line is attached, the other line is not attached. What do these 3 lines correspond to? This corresponds again to Machshava, Dibur, and Maisa. That's what we're talking about, Dr. Farbrengen. However, the second leg of the Hay, which is the 3rd of the lines in the Hay, this corresponds to Maisa. Why is there a space between the leg and the roof of the Hay? This comes to show us that between Machshava Dibur and Maisa, there is a pause. There is a space. Was meint das? The Rebbe referred to Sichas of the Friedeke Rebbe, that before a person does something, anything we do, if we have any doubts, is this the proper thing to do, or isn't it the proper thing to do? We have to think, is this in accordance to Shulchan Aruch? Is it proper al pi Shulchan Aruch to do so? Is this what Torah requires us to do? What will be the outcome of what I'm doing? All of this has to be thought before we do something. So that is why Machshava and Dibur are attached. However, before we go into Maisa, we have to think. We have to think, is this really what the Rebishter wants us to do? Is this really what we should do? Is this really the proper act for us to do? And when we trace it back to Shulchan Aruch, and we realize that this is what we should do, then we could first do it. The Rebbe continued asking that those who have submitted mashke for whatever occasion should rise milmaila lamata and come up and get the mashke, and this should lead to it that they themselves should be involved yet more in good projects and in good inyanim, and other people should copy from them and follow in their footsteps in arranging various type of functions and various types of inyanim. Especially, says the Rebbe, this week there is the convention of the women which is taking place here. When we're talking about the major role which women played in Matan Torah, so we're right before Matan Torah, we will know what Chazal tells us based on the pasuk that the Rebbe told Moshe Rabbeinu, first he should address Beis Yaakov, and then later he should talk to Bnei Yisrael. Beis Yaakov referring to the Jewish woman and speak to them in a soft way of expression, and then first later he should talk to the Bnei Yisrael. And when we're talking about the major role which the woman plays today, and especially in recent generations, when the concept of learning with women Torah was introduced, this is something which prior generations did not have it. However, our generations are fortunate that women today are learning Torah, and there are many inyanim in Torah which can be learned by women, inyanim of halacha, and inyanim of the Sefer HaChinuch in the beginning, in the introduction to his Sefer, tells us that there are 6 constant mitzvahs, and he lists them: loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so forth. And all these mitzvahs, women are equally responsible to them as men. So they have to learn all about fulfilling these mitzvahs. And this is really what Chassidus is all about. Chassidus teaches us how to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how to fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so forth. Early in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe referred to an expression in Chazal, schar mitzvah, mitzvah. Chazal tells us, what is the reward for the mitzvah? The mitzvah itself. So Rebbe brought a taich that schar mitzvah, mitzvah. See this taich is, what does the word mitzvah stem from? Mitzvah is meloshen attachment. set of pliers is called a tzvas in Hebrew. Mitzvah attaches. It attaches the one who does the mitzvah with the commander of the mitzvah. So that's the type, schal mitzvah mitzvah. The reward for a mitzvah is that we're getting attached with the commander of the mitzvah. This is the biggest reward we can get for a mitzvah. That as an outcome of it, we are becoming attached with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, back to Arvini. And it is all these vast inyanim in Torah which women can learn today, and which women are learning today. And based on what the Rambam tells us, that when Mashiach will come, the world will be full of wisdom, full of chachma and das. So as a preparation to what the world will be like when Mashiach will come, that is why it is in the most recent generations, women are also so much involved in learning of Torah, as opposed to previous generations when women did not have so much of a shaykhus to Torah. The Rebbe says furthermore, we see that when the Mother tells us that women also have a share in the learning of Torah of their husbands and of their children. Because they sit up and they wait for their husbands to come back from the shiurim and Torah, and wait for their children to come back from yeshiva. And they also take their children to yeshiva. So because of all of this, they too have a part in the learning Torah of their husbands and children. Says the Rebbe, however, when women are able to converse in Torah, side with their children and side with their husbands, so this yet more gives them a yet greater share in the Torah of their children and the Torah of the husband. For example, when a child comes home from yeshiva and the mother is capable of learning with the child and following with the child what he's learning, and the Rebbe referred to the Sinya very briefly in last Shabbos Farbrengen as well. And right before Shabbos, a brief sikha came out, which was edited by the Rebbe, which the caption of it is the responsibility for women, the obligation of women to learn Torah nowadays. And in that sikha, the Rebbe brings out that we see a difference when a child learns with his father as when he learns with his mother. When he learns with his father, it's a kind of a test. However, when he learns with his mother, the special warmth and softness which the Eibishter has initiated in women, and when the child learns with his mother, it has a much stronger impact on the child. It creates a warmth and a softness on the child when he has an opportunity to review his learning with his mother. And the same when the mother is capable to discuss in Yanim and Torah with her husband when he comes back from his shiurim, this brings out a stronger relationship in the Yanim of Torah between husband and wife. So her share in the husband's Torah is a yet greater share. And as Rabbi continued, Bechlal, we see that women are doing mitzvahs, and the mitzvahs which the women are doing, their mitzvahs, in other words, which they are obligated to do. They are doing it with a tremendous kach, with a tremendous dedication. As we see the women's involvement in Shabbos, for example. So we see that a balabasta, right away, as soon as we come into the new week, right away from Sunday, she begins already thinking and planning the upcoming Shabbos. Like the Gemara tells us regarding the opinion of Beis Shammai, that right away from Sunday, one is to prepare the nicest and the best for Shabbos. And the same thing we see by women, to such an extent that the inyan of lighting candles. What is the inyan of lighting candles? So the Gemara tells us Shabbos candles originated because it's Friday night, there's no light in the house. So in order not to trip over a rock or a piece of wood or a piece of lumber, we tin Shabbos. So who was given this power that we should not trip over anything, so that even the husband and sons should not trip over anything? Who is given this power of bringing this lichtigkeit into the house? This power was given to the Jewish woman. So therefore the Rebbe says he's confident that this convention which is taking place now, which is a kinus of tzaddikim, all Yidden are called tzaddikim, v'amich kolam tzaddikim, especially when women gather for an inyan, for a cause of Torah, that how good resolutions are ready, which women are going to accept upon themselves as an outcome of this convention. He's urging to increase the resolutions and accept even yet more in Yanim, to strengthen Yanim of Torah and Yanim of Yiddishkeit and Yanim of mitzvahs. The Rebbe spoke very warmly in the Farbrengen about the great success which the Lag B'Omer parades had. The Tahaluchas of Lag B'Omer. The Rebbe again referred to Tahalucha. It's called a Tahalucha. Tahalucha means it's a parade. It's an outing, but tahalucha is also meloshin mahalech, meloshin going. In other words, by participating in all of these inyanim where I go, this in itself leads to an elevation to a higher madregas and yet higher madregas. And from the day of Lag B'Omer, which was this past Sunday, we're now coming into the month of Sivan. And in the month of Sivan, we will be celebrating Shavuos. And we all know what Chazal tell us regarding Shavuos, that the guarantors which the Rebbe accepted to give the Torah to the Yidden were the Jewish children, the Jewish kinderlach. So therefore, says the Rebbe, it's appropriate that on the first day of Shavuos, when we read Matan Torah in Shul, to make sure that all children and all youngsters are brought to Shul on that day. The Rebbe concluded the Farbrengen that the Arizal tells us that just like Chazal say, that in the merit of Noshem Tzidkoniyos, we went out of Mitzrayim, so it was even Moshe and Aaron. How did they go out of Mitzrayim? In the merit of the Noshem Tzidkoniyos. The same says the Arizal, it will be in the merit of the Noshem Tzidkoniyos of this generation, which this generation is the last generation of Golus, and the first generation of Geula, that we will go out of Golus with Mashiach Tzidkenu.